I hope you all enjoyed that and learned a lot from that. I think it's really helpful to hear directly from people and how it feels. And you know, something I forgot to share with you earlier when we were talking about safety, I know people who have been under guardianship that have been abused. And they weren't abused by their guardian, but I assure you that the guardianship did not protect that person from being abused. And I think that there's a perception that that is true. So anyway, I'm glad that we're learning about how to build skills and what we can do to explore the options first before we go down that road. So we're going to talk a little more about the next steps and other information. I had questions about cases and what's possible. And so that's what we're going to be talking about next is supported decision-making agreements and some case law. So in California, we have conservatorship laws, and there is a stipulation in there that alternatives to conservatorship should be considered and reasons why those alternatives are not available. And so I haven't really seen anything be different as a result of that. So we really are looking to have additional legislation in California. And so it is something that we can reference and language we can use, and I'll give you more information. And I'll also share with you what other states have done and where we'd like to go. So thinking about capacity, they were sharing that some people can make some decisions, some people can manage certain life areas with assistance, and others are unable to make any decisions unless they have assistance. So capacity varies, and it's on a continuum. So if people can only make certain decisions with assistance and support, are they incapacitated? We asked this question before. If people are able to make decisions when they have support, and is conservatorship necessary, and is it the least restrictive manner? And I would say no. That we need to try other options. And really what we see, just based on people's experience, is they don't often try alternatives first. So we want to empower you to do that. So looking at supported decision-making agreements and case law, basically there are 5 or 6 states that have official legislation. Those include Wisconsin, Tennessee, Delaware, Texas, and just last week we got Alaska, which is very, very exciting. They had this whole event announcing it. And so we really want to have some legislation that officially acknowledges supported decision-making. And again, you can attach these things to legal binding documents. You can write it into legal binding documents. We have examples written by attorneys. We haven't had a supported decision-making agreement challenged in court. So there are plenty of people that are using them and attaching them to legal binding documents, but they have not been challenged in California. So we'd like to have it spelled out more clearly, because what we have now is not working. So I'm going to go through some cases. The first is Peary, and in this case, the woman showed that she had a circle of support to help her be successful, and they reversed a decision to grant guardianship. And then that was in 1999. In 2012, we had Damaris, where a woman was able to terminate guardianship because she was able to show that she was able to make decisions with a circle of support, and that she was able to live safely. In the Jenny Hatch case, that's kind of how we came to where we are today. Because after the Jenny Hatch case, the National Resource Center for Supported Decision-Making came into existence. So Jonathan Martinez, who's a partner in this grant project, was the attorney on this case. And Jenny has a website. She has Down syndrome, and she's really a great model for self-advocacy for other people with disabilities. I met her. She's a joy. And basically, she was working in a thrift shop for a couple. She was living in an apartment above the thrift shop. having a great life, having friends, going to church. And one day she got into a bicycle accident. She was hit by a car. And in her case, her parents realized that there was a sum of money that would be had as a result of her getting hit by a car. And so they were filing for conservatorship, and she was taken from her job, from her friends, from her home, and she was placed in a group home. And she had a different attorney originally, and that attorney wasn't allowed to visit her, and eventually she got Jonathan Martinez, who was also not allowed to visit her. And so he really had to fight to get in there to even talk to her. And so basically what happened is they granted a temporary guardianship, and she was able to pick Jim and, I'm losing the other woman's name. They're a wonderful couple. But the couple that helped her work in the thrift shop was able to be the guardians for the first year. And then the judge said she could decide what was going to be happening next. So she basically exited the guardianship after 1 year and made decisions that first year, created a record and evidence and data. And now she's living her life and living with these people. So that's a great story, and she's just a joyful person. Good example for people. The next case, I'm actually going to be going over more the Ryan King case. This is a case where the parents wanted him to exit the conservatorship, and they weren't allowing it to happen. But I'm going to tell you more about it after I talk to you about the client-lawyer relationship in Rule 1.14, which basically says that there can be a family or someone else there to assist the person, and that is not harming the client-lawyer relationship. So often the attorney will tell you that anyway, but there's actually more information than just this. If you look up the comments for Rule 1.14, this is the American Bar Association rule, basically what lawyers have to adhere to. And there's even more information that's really helpful. So in the Ryan King case, the parents and the individual worked together, and he had a job. He was very highly functional, doing a lot of independent living skills, and his parents were told that they had to get conservatorship in order for them to help him. And so they argued, I don't want to conserve him. And they said, well, you're not going to be able to help him. So they did. And then about 10 years later, they said, well, he's doing really well. A similar story to what you saw in the video. He should be able to exit the conservatorship now. And the court said no, because I think judges are concerned. And I said earlier that there were judges that knew nothing about supported decision making. And that may not be true. But I think that there are judges that aren't aware of it. And they feel safe with what they know, and conservatorship is the information that they have. So the court said no. And I can tell you, these cases take years. It was 2 or 3 years. There was an article in the newspaper, and I think it was the Washington Post, all about Ryan King, and it was a long process. But in 2016, they presented the court with an evaluation like the one that I was talking about, the one that's not about IQ, as the gentleman was asking. What they do is they go and follow the person in their life and see what decisions they're able to make and how they live their life, and submit that as part of the evidence. And they submitted a power of attorney. And so the court held that he was able to exit the guardianship, and he's living independently, he's got a job. I was able to meet these people as well, and it's just a great story, and it's great to meet those people who felt that way and to see the joy on their face when they talk about having the freedom. So in Vermont, there was a case where a gentleman was under a guardianship with his grandmother, and then the grandmother moved to resign as the guardian. There was a public guardian assigned, and she said, hey, I think this person could benefit from supported decision making. I think they have a team that could help him exit the guardianship. So the court ordered that the public guardian would meet with the team and explore the possibility of exiting the guardianship, which is rare. It was great. So the supporters met, they developed a plan, and they submitted the supported decision-making agreement and plan to the court, and they were able to terminate the guardianship. Another case, DD in New York, there was a person with Down syndrome who was 29, had intellectual disability. There were evidence, basically 2 doctors said that he was not able to make decisions, and then they submitted evidence showing that he worked, that he was able to use transportation, that he managed his life, he had a social life, and took care of his personal hygiene. He said he wanted to get married, and the mother said, no, I don't want you to get married. So she moved for a guardianship. The gal, that's the guardian ad litem, that is the guardian that the public guardian that's assigned. And she recommended alternatives to guardianship. And so again, the guardianship was denied. There was no evidence that he couldn't make decisions without support. I love the language here, because they talk about enabling people with disabilities to maintain as much control over their own life decisions as they are capable of doing in the least restrictive setting. The standard here is not whether the petitioners could make better decisions, it's whether the individual has the capacity to make decisions for himself with support, which he abundantly had. That is a great case. The American Bar Association has a tool called the Practical Tool, and each letter of that stands for a process that an attorney can go through to determine if it would be more appropriate to have a conservatorship or if supported decision-making should be considered. And I would just say my personal opinion on this too is that it depends on if this attorney is familiar with what supported decision-making looks like, if he sees a team, if he or she has experience with people with disabilities. My concern would be if all the attorney knows is conservatorship and doesn't have a background with people with disabilities, how they could use that tool. So I think it's really important that the whole team is involved in that. So in Texas, there's legislation that there should be supports and services to support the people to be successful, people with disabilities to manage their health, their finances, and make decisions. Before placing them in a guardianship, the court must find clear and convincing evidence that they cannot make decisions using supports and services. So that's a really great statement, and we were wowed that Texas was the first state before California. So that was a great story. I know a lot of advocates in Texas, and it can be very challenging there. So that's a great move for Texas. They recognize supported decision-making agreements. They do have a model agreement. I think in Texas, you have to use that form. So maybe you could have a separate agreement that says something else, but I think in that case, you have to use their form. And I want to make sure. So Delaware recognizes supported decision-making agreements as legally enforceable agreements. They need to designate at least one supporter. They talk about the types of decisions that the supporter can help with, and also the types of decisions that the supporter does not help with, that the person is going to do without assistance. A supported decision-making agreement must be in writing with the elements of the form of the Department of Health and Social Services. In Wisconsin, they have a supported decision-making agreement legislation, and I think this was last year, a process of supporting and accommodating an adult with a functional impairment to enable the adult to make life decisions about where they want to live, the services and supports, the medical care that they want to receive. I love that it's very specific in this way too, who they want to live with, and where the adult wants to work without impeding the self-determination of the adult. And the execution of the supported decision-making agreement cannot be used as evidence of incapacity and incompetency for a guardianship proceeding, which I think is wonderful. So each state is able to do different things according to what they have to work with and the legislation there. Tennessee, least restrictive alternatives that preserve as many decision-making rights as practical under particular circumstances. So let me read that again. Least restrictive alternatives means techniques and processes that preserve as many decision-making rights as practical under the particular circumstances for the person with a disability. So that's different than California, that just talks about least restrictive alternatives should be considered. It kind of defines it a little better for people. So as a result of the Jenny Hatch case, the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making was funded, and that is an amazing resource. SupportedDecisionMaking.org. Basically anything about supported decision making is typically on that website. There are plenty of resources available there. So Vermont is where they're practicing circles, coordinated culture of support, the CCS. And so here it will be called the blueprint. We probably won't have something called CCS, but that's basically what they created there. So they create solutions and initiatives that transform practices in a way that brings a culture of collaboration. And it's everyone. I mean, I think it's an incredible pilot program. There should be some great data that comes out of it. It includes consumers and families, individuals, providers, legal, attorneys, education, employment, advocacy, mental health, aging, and developmental disabilities communities. Excuse me. So they're identifying people who could possibly take care of themselves to see if they could terminate the guardianship, and they're identifying students that are at risk of guardianship and helping to provide them supports and services to avoid guardianship. There's collaboration between the public guardian, developmental disabilities agencies, and state evaluators, whether they are able to make their own decisions if they have the appropriate supports. And education, educating people about supported decision making. So I'll try and move a little quicker through here. I'm a law student, so I love this stuff. In Kentucky, they have 5 to 7 people who are under guardianship or risk that they're identifying. They're helping them to implement supported decision making and to be restored from guardianship, and looking at the impact on the quality of their life. The Center for Public Representation is in Massachusetts, and they identified people who could be using supported decision making, and they created model forms, and there was actually data that came out of that. So I believe that is something we provide. It's Nantucket is the name of those model forms. It's available on this website here, supporteddecisions.org. So Sachs Institute for Mental Health, the Gould School of Law, is in LA, and there's a woman there named Ellen Sachs, and she has schizophrenia, and she's an attorney, and she's an amazing leader there at the Gould School of Law. And she is helping head up with Jonathan Martinez and some other people to identify people with mental health who could possibly practice supported decision making, and to analyze, take data, and look at the quality of their life. So that is still happening. They had a mental health supported decision making conference last year with a lot of really great people coming together to try and make that happen. So it can happen. Here's Ryan King and his mom, Susie, signing the power of attorney. And this is kind of a review. Alaska needs to be added here. These are the different states: Tennessee, Delaware, Wisconsin, Texas, Alaska. We have the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making, and the Virginia Secretary of Health and Human Services recommended that they have a way to recognize supported decision making as a legitimate alternative to guardianship. The American Bar Association is recommending that they have an increased use of supported decision making, and basically of using the practical tool. And again, the National Guardianship continues to support using supported decision making first before considering guardianship. So it's happening. There are projects happening in many other states: Maine, New York, South Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Florida, Nevada, Idaho, and Massachusetts to increase access to and implementation of supports and services so that people can avoid undue and overbroad guardianship, which is what we're talking about here. So where does it belong? I talked to you about earlier how you can fold it into legal binding documents or attach it as a supported decision-making agreement. And so we call it supported decision-making fold-ins. And so that's just basically writing it into the notes, however you can write it into that legal binding document, or attaching the agreement that you have. And I was talking with another woman earlier, you know, if you're just getting started, it's easier to write it into the notes and have the individual say, I want my mom, my dad, my aunt, my counselor, my supporter to help me make educational decisions, to help me make my decisions with my IPP and in my life. And then if you don't have a team yet, you can start the supported decision-making agreement and develop the team and attach the agreement. So there are templates that are available. They are not one size fits all. It is supposed to be more like an IEP and IPP. They are not all supposed to be the same. I think that's what's hard for people, is they would like it to be boilerplate, canned compartment. And everyone is unique and everyone is different. So every supported decision-making agreement should be different. And the examples that we have are written by attorneys. They're written in plain language purposefully so that they, if they were to be go before a court, that they would be defensible. So the examples that you have do have the feedback of various attorneys, and there's examples from the ACLU, Texas, Nantucket. There's one on the Autism Self-Advocacy Network website, and I think I have a slide that has that information, and if not, I can make sure I send it to you with the slides. So these are legal binding documents that you can put supported decision-making language in. Medicaid and HCBS waivers, IPPs, person-centered plans, IEPs, and employment plans. So powers of attorney are a legal contract that gives authority for someone to act for another person or with that person, and they can be very detailed and very unique as well. The individual is presumed competent when they enter the contract and giving someone authority to make decisions. And I'm going to go over, when we start talking about implementing supported decision making, what could be helpful if you have a person with intellectual disability who's nonverbal. I think we're going to talk about this data, taking data, having goals that are implemented by teams, by professionals, having video when you're asking questions about who they want to be on their team and how they want support. I think that's very helpful. HIPAA agreements, so you can write right on this HIPAA agreement, I would like Sally to help me make my medical decisions. An SSI PAE application, same thing, they can write right on there. I would like my support team member to help me make decisions and help me with my SSI. And there is some information that was published by the National Social Security Administration talking about supported decision making, acknowledging it, but not necessarily making a recommendation. But they are aware that there's supported decision making happening and that people are writing that on their payee applications. So setting the wheels in motion. Here is where we get to choose if you want to have another break or you want to keep going. Who's for a break? Keep going. You're outnumbered, I'm so sorry. So we'll keep going. I know people are tired and it's a really long day. It's a lot of information. So basically we want to find out how we can help people be independent, empower them to have autonomy, and to set change in motion. So dreams. If you're a parent, think of the things that are what you dream for another person. If you're a supporter, think of what you dream for that person. And what do you dream for yourself? What do they dream for themselves? Just think about that for a minute. Do you know what they dream? So do you know what those dreams are? And if we don't know what those dreams are, how can we know what they are? Do you have the tools that you need in your toolbox? What services and supports do they have? Do you have needs and questions that are yet to be fulfilled, and how can we get those? What is missing? Do you know what is missing? What do you need? What does that person need that they don't have now? And how could you get creative with a team and try and fill in those gaps? So one of the tools that could be a support or service could get your individual closer to identifying and expressing the hopes, dreams, interests, and challenges that are important to them and opportunities they wish were available. What are those opportunities and how can we find them? So how can we better know our exceptional person, their desires, and begin to set the wheels in motion? So I'm going to have you think about a dream that you had. Think about a dream that you had that came true and what that was like. What was that dream? What did it take to have your dream come true? Did you have to work at it? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a routine? Did you write it down? Did it take some time? Might have taken a long time. Did you have a system, a map, a way of getting there to your dream? And was it easy or was it challenging? And I imagine if you're thinking of that dream, it has to be the great one, the one that was challenging. So how do we learn and grow? Did you make mistakes along the way of getting your dream? Did you learn from them? What did you learn? How did you learn? And did you have a team? Did you have a circle of support? Somebody to help guide you and head in the right direction? And when you were going this way, someone go, this way, oh, this way. So what it takes for others to have their dreams is what it takes for us to have our dreams. And to think about how that feels to have that accomplishment in your life, that you conquered your fears, that you jumped over obstacles, that you made it, that you were proud. So think again of that victory, and what did you learn simply from walking the path of building skills, accepting yourself where you are, and believing you could get there. I had a boss when I was younger, and I would say, she was an English teacher prior, and I would say, can I do this? Can I do that? And she'd go, I don't know, can you? And so I think the process of having a goal and having it achieved is answering that question. It's they don't know if they can, and we don't know if they can, and we won't know until we give them the tools to do that. But it takes more than that. It takes action, it takes commitment, it takes a support team. What did it take for your dream to come true? The truth is, it takes whatever it takes. It takes whatever it takes. And I think most of us know, if you work with people with disabilities, what does it take for Susie to accomplish her goal? It's going to take whatever it takes for Susie to accomplish her goal. So I think sometimes it's really good for us to put ourselves in their shoes and to remember how worth it was for us to have our dreams come true, and that they need help in order to get those dreams that are so important to them come true. So a hand up. It's crucial that we enjoy and learn as we travel on this journey, remind each other that our well-being is a priority, and offer assistance, ideas, and tools along the way. And so it's a little bit off, but I think that as a mother of people with disabilities, what helps people be successful, what enables parents to be successful is to have a circle of support for themselves, to have a place to go and ask for help, and for supporters in general, that they have support and they have what they need. And if you aren't getting what you need, you're not going to be able to support your individual. So community is the solution, I believe. So we are the same. We said that just like the rest of us, what it takes as an individual, as a person, according to the maximum extent of their unique abilities. So the shape of my dream, we said this before, the shape of my dream looks entirely different than somebody else's dream. I swear one of my son's dreams is like this. And he's got built-in trampoline. His feet are going all the time, and he's got dreams. He's going to get them. He just got a job in the marching band, and I'm so excited. But we're all different, and all of our dreams are unique and different, and the journey is to find out what it is they dream for themselves. So self-determination is having control over our lives. Choosing when we get up, choosing what to eat, choosing where to go, choosing what career we're going to have, what life partner we're going to have, what you want to do and be for the rest of your life. Alternatively, we can help people with disabilities. Teaching them skills and offering them assistance in the areas that they need it. So the big C. Imagine you have a piece of paper and you're going to write a big C on it. And then I want you to think of your favorite food. Your favorite food, gotta have it. I always say if I'm on my deathbed, I have to have Reese's peanut butter cups and onion rings. That was way too much information. It's really important. I better have that. What about the favorite place that you like to go? Where do you like to go? What's your favorite place in the world? If you could close your eyes and go there, what would that place be? And who are you with? Who are the people that make you smile, that give you comfort, that make you feel safe, that make you feel inspired? They know they get you, they support you in your life. Your friends, your family, like-minded individuals. Maybe not your family sometimes. We got to admit to ourselves, sometimes for ourselves. You know, there are times there might be somebody else there. These could be people you admire, you respect, that make you laugh, that make you feel loved, that are caring. And why are these things important to you? If you think about them, what makes them important to you? What do they mean in your life? Think about your favorite political party. No, that's a joke. We should not talk about politics right now. Okay. So you have your favorite person, you have a favorite place to go, your favorite people to be with, you know why you love them, why you want them in your life, why you feel empowered. And now wave that piece of paper in front of you. You are now conserved. Does it make you less hungry? Does it make you want to eat different foods, or is it still your favorite food? Will it prevent you from loving anything less or wanting the same people in your life? Did it suddenly make you a Republican? Don't answer that question. Learned helplessness. Could that piece of paper change how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your life and what hope you have for yourself? To have control. You've lost your human rights. How do you feel about that news, that you've lost your human rights? Do you feel empowered? And does it change your needs, or are your needs exactly the same? So, does it pave the way? Does it pave the way, being conserved, does it pave the way to getting those things that represent who you are? Does it pave the way to having what you want in life? Where are the tools? So does that piece of paper come with a box of tools? Does it teach you the skills you need to be safe? What about all those factors that we need to fulfill our dreams and our needs? Does it come with what it takes to get there? Or does it just remove your rights? So unfortunately, this paper that represents conservatorship really builds a wall, an invisible wall for people with disabilities. They often feel like they're not able to have what it is that it takes and what it is they dream. An invisible wall of protection as well, right? So we're talking about what is it going to take to keep somebody safe? And I assure you, I know the people who have been abused while they're under guardianship, and again, not by the guardian, but the piece of paper is not going to keep them safe. What's going to keep them safe is to be able to express how they feel, to express that something is not okay, to express that I don't think this is right, and to be able to have programmed in their AAC device, you know, I'm hurt, and did I fall down, or did somebody hurt me? You know, a conservatorship isn't going to give those skills. So we can walk through that wall of protection. And why do we build that wall for people with disabilities? So when there is no other way, and we have asked all the questions, and we have done whatever it takes with a circle of support, then we ask, what else have we tried? We're talking about how to avoid undue and overbroad guardianship. And the purpose of the exercise was really to find the least restrictive options first. And we're not in judgment of anybody who's already conserved a loved one. We're all here on this journey together. And this is really about education, empowerment, and tools for everybody to use. So your lives, your needs, your dreams, they're handpicked and tailored for you. Why do I say you? Because as you can see, putting yourself in the shoes of someone else is very important. And to know that for each person with a disability, they are as unique as you are. So what is the harm in taking choice and decision making away from people? What harm would it be to you? So now I'm going to pick your favorite food. I'm going to pick your favorite place to go. I know the people that you want to be around. I think you're really going to like it. I think I know what you're thinking. I think I know what you want. So I'm going to be really kind and give you those things that you want. You want purple hair, don't you? You want to go to either Star Trek or Star Wars. Star Trek or Star Wars. You're not making a choice. Why aren't you making a choice? Is that not what you just thought of? Maybe you thought of something else. You don't want to shred paper. You know, often we say that people don't have the skills to accomplish something. Well, did we ask them if they wanted to do it? Do they want to shred paper? Maybe they hate shredding paper. I know people who love to shred paper. So some people do and some people don't. So we really want to make sure that we're being careful that I can't tell you as an advocate in IEP meetings, often a child is seen as non-compliant if they're not picking the choices that they're being given, and often they're not given other choices. So we want to make sure we have an open mind. So how can we start going down this road? So where can we get the supports and services we talked about? We're going to get those in our IEP, we're going to get those in our IPP, in our person-centered plan. Who is the individual? What are their needs? What supports and services do they already have? Do we have the interagency collaboration that we want? And where are the gaps? So we want to identify that. So we each have a set of forms, and this is a paper I wrote with Jonathan Martinez called Setting the Wheels in Motion, so there's more information to it, which will be in the slides. But I'm going to go through basically some bullet points that are reiteration of the article, and then we have forms to try and fill out for our person. So we need to know what the person wants, who the person works with now, who else could they work with. We're not going to answer all these questions while we're sitting here, because we're going to have a supported decision-making team, but we can get started. So who is a good supported decision-making team to pick? Someone that we trust, someone that accepts and supports us, someone who knows who we are. And if we've identified all these areas of need, then is it somebody that could help us with that area of need? Like for instance, my daughter has an educational psychologist and a speech therapist on her team. And so we're going to look at different life areas. Is it somebody that could be available long-term? And is it somebody who makes the person the agenda? So what are the goals? What are the person's goals? What does the person need to reach those goals? And what's in the person's way of reaching those goals? Who can help and how? And I mention again here, and I'm reminded as a mother with 3 children with disabilities, how much I want for my children and how sometimes that can feel overwhelming. And as we're making changes in our lives, we're doing something new and we're trying to figure this out, right? So we don't want to get in the weeds. We want to look at the big picture and go, what do we know right now? Write it down. Do we have a team? Who could be a team? Do a brainstorming session. So that's how I started, was doing a brainstorming session. Just wrote on a piece of paper. So what are the life areas that this person might need help with? Finances, medical, housing, social, behavioral needs, employment, interpersonal, social relationships I mentioned, self-care, activities of daily living, organization, recreation, and leisure. So I made this list, and then I thought, well, I don't need that many people on my team. That's going to be chaotic if we have that many people on our team. So then you look at where the areas overlap, like social, emotional overlaps with behavioral, and there's some speech components in there, and who can help us with multiple areas that we need here. So how do we work as a team? How often should the team meet? And when you first start, you should meet whenever you can meet, whenever it works for the team to meet, and really be accommodating for new team members. We want them to feel good about being on the team, and it's really important that we nurture that relationship and we find out what works for them. And of course, we have to find out what works for the individual and to do both of those things. What's manageable for everybody? In the beginning, meeting frequently is better, and work at the pace that is going to avoid overwhelm. So this is an example of the form that you have. This is the first page, and I think I have each of them in here. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. So how can I help use SDM? And so for each of these pages, each of these forms, I tried to put it in 2 different formats. So there's a diagram that you can follow, there's a form that you can fill out, or maybe you have a big piece of paper, maybe you do a collage. You're going to do it however it works for your team. So how can I help use supported decision making? Begin, brainstorm. Do we have assessments? Do we need additional assessments? What decisions are they already making? And what decisions can they make? How do they make them? Which are important to them? And then, do we have a supported decision-making agreement? So this is a repeat of that. And then we have who should be on the team. So list those trusted and who are likely willing to be on the team. And then ask those questions. Do they accept and support this person? Do they have knowledge and expertise about an area that we need? Are they available long-term? Are they flexible and willing to make the individual the agenda? And here's the form that goes with that. What are the big picture goals? What are the person's written goals already? Which does the individual want? Where do those areas overlap? What is needed to reach those goals? These are big questions. So start where you are and do what you can and keep going. What are the challenges and the obstacles? who can help and how. And this is kind of defining the different areas and answering those questions. And then we have, how often do we schedule supported decision-making team meetings? So you look at the individual schedule, you look at the needs of the potential team members, what can work, any date. What's the first meeting date that we can meet? Let's meet. Is it for 15 minutes? Is it by phone? Is it by Skype? How can we do it? How can we foster those relationships? You go to Parents Helping Parents, you go to events where there's other people. Some people don't have a lot of support in their life. Maybe they need to start with service providers, you know, and go from there. What do potential supported decision-making team members need to decide? They often will have some questions. What are you talking about? What is supported decision-making? So they need to go online and see some videos. Again, what does your unique individual want? Are there people from the past and stretch towards the possibilities? So for my daughter, I was thinking, who does my daughter want? And the person that immediately popped in my head was her former speech therapist. And she would take her to the mall. They would talk about language and learn all these new skills by getting yogurt and going to H&M. And she really treated her like her girlfriend. And so they walked over there together. Mom was not allowed to go. They checked everything out. And she was like, see ya, Mom, you know, I'm out of here. And so I said, hey, would you like so-and-so to be on your team? And she was like, she screamed with excitement. So she was a former speech therapist. And that wasn't somebody that we had now. And I loved our current speech therapist. But I didn't think she was the one for the supported decision-making team. And then there could be an unbiased person, two unbiased people actually, because the speech therapist is going to ask and verify that what she says is correct, and the person on the supported decision-making team happens to be another speech therapist. And so here we have the forms that goes along with that. This is something that actually didn't end up getting attached to the article. So the article has the story of how I came up with the form and then the forms. And of course it has information from Jonathan about supported decision making. And then this was the intake form. So this is something I can forward to you if you'd like. And it was just a way of me writing down some of the answers to the questions about what they have now and what they need as we're filling in the blanks, what are their goals and what they could have going forward. So this also has their program, their school district, and this is for a new supported decision-making team member to learn about the individual, which they also could do through person-centered planning and visuals that way. This is dates of service, regional center information. So it's very detailed to fill in all those things and make it a little easier. So I think I'm going to check our time, and we are at, sorry, we are at 2:55. We are going to take a break, and I'm going to take questions, and so that's a very good question. Don't go crazy. To the microphone. No, it's not included in the article, but I can send it to you. Yes. The intake. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then basically, I think I had something else. You want to have notes when you have a supported decision-making team meeting. You want to say who attended the meeting, and then just a blurb of what happened. So you can use that for your first meeting. Any other questions?
In the video we saw, the narrator said the best training for protection was training in how to make judgments and training in how to say no.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, you know, I have 3 neurotypical daughters who did that kind of training when they were preteens. It was great, simple stuff like someone's talking at you, you don't want to interact with them. I don't want to talk. Very effective, super simple. Do you or anybody in the room know of a class like that that our kids are welcome at?
Well, I'm going to go over some tools, and one of them is a circles program. That talks about, how are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's not quite so down and dirty, the service
Yeah.
program, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there are other social programs and safety programs that are offered directly by your regional center too.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's a good goal to have. I have had that goal for my children, to say no. And often that is a goal to replace behavior, right? Because they're not saying no, they're going, no, and with their body and doing all kinds of things. So it's a great goal to learn to say no. And actually, I was talking to this gentleman earlier about how important it is to teach them not to sign the IEP immediately in the IEP room. That we wait and we talk to our supporters, and that's what adults, and that's what we do, right? As parents and people signing the IEP, we don't sign that day, right? I hope we ought to go to a meeting and we sign it later, because we just need to look at it and read it and talk to somebody else and say, hey, is this a good idea? So we're telling them to do the same thing. So I think it's effective in many ways for their life. Yeah. Thank you. Did I answer your question?
Sort of.
Sort of. Do you have another question?
No, that's really my question. I want to get my kid in a class like that. So if anybody knows anything, you know, I want to hear about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here you go. Is that
I
working?
just
Yeah.
noticed on your list of, things to plan for, I didn't see transportation on there, and that's a real barrier for a lot of people. Do you have
That's
any
a good
suggestions on how to include that
How to include it
in a plan?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point. I mean, anything that's missing on that form should be, thank you. Anything that's missing on that form should be included. So there's travel training through the regional center where they learn to take the bus. And then there's also outreach and other programs where they go pick them up and take them to their program. So for instance, I had a case where the dad wanted the person to go to the program in Watsonville because that's where he wanted to drive her. And so there's transportation to go farther to the place that she wanted to go. So is that your question?
Right, I didn't know if there are resources, for that.
Yes, and there's transportation to and from school. You can have transportation in the IEP.
But once they're out of school and more independent, public transportation is very limited.
It's called travel training to teach them to do it. I'm sorry. Here.
Okay, your daughter made friends with a speech therapist and as a supportive decision maker, I guess.
Mhm.
And is she in the legal document?
Right now, we have it written into the IEP and into the IPP.
So if she decides to go to New York and get married and stay away out of California, then you have to approach your attorney again?
In my particular case, that's not going to happen. But so your question is?
I thought you had on a SDM.
Yes.
That's the legal document.
Yes. So you're asking if there was a scenario that somebody got on a plane?
Who wants to leave off the team?
Oh, I misunderstood your question. So you're referring to the speech therapist?
Right.
Yeah, so those things happen. The supported decision-making team is going to change, and
Right.
you may not like it. It may be that they have to move to Australia or New York, like you suggested, yes. Yeah, so then you need a different team member. And you should expect that there could be changes, even though that you look for somebody who's long-term, that there are changes on the supported decision-making team sometimes, because that happens in life.
Right, so on a legal document, you would have to approach your attorney again.
Well, you wouldn't need to approach an attorney. You can have a supported decision-making agreement and attach it to a legal binding document, and they do recommend that you have it notarized.
Oh, I get it, notarized. There you go, thank you.
Yeah,
right.
thanks. That was a good question.
Right. $15 for notarized, right?
I'm sorry, I might have missed something, but you were talking about how the form was not attached to the article, and I must have missed what article you're referencing and where we would have access to that.
Oh, okay. It's called Setting the Wheels in Motion, Supported Decision-Making, Setting the Wheels in Motion for Supported Decision-Making Teams. Yeah, and so you can find that on supporteddecisionmaking.org. That's the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making.
Got it.
Thank
Okay.
you for
Thank you
asking.
so much.
Thank you. Here we go.
I was just wondering, when you talk about the supported decision-making team, and I'm a little bit not clear on, is this like a final decision that they make together, like a binding decision, a binding, or is it just more like a casual discussion that the person can just change their mind later? Like, how does that work?
You can do both.
Okay.
So your question was, and if you could put your, when you're
Okay.
talking, I don't hear very well, so I'm asking for an accommodation. So if you, you're asking if it has to be formal or if it could be informal. Yes, it could be informal, and you could have it be more formal.
Right, so like if the person could just change their mind later and just say, well, you know, I don't agree with what my team said. I'm going to just do my own thing. That's okay too?
They could, yeah, they could, and somebody on the team is going to say, hey, what's going on? What sparked that? Is there something that you need, and how can we support you?
Okay, so this is more for major decisions, not like what you're going to eat for lunch tomorrow, obviously. This is major life decision stuff.
Yeah, so you would define, and in fact, I'm going to show you a video of a supported decision-making agreement that's created by the ACLU, and they're going to show how you go through the agreement together.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you expand on the travel training through regional center? Do they?
I think what you can do is you can talk to your case manager and ask them about it. Ask to call in IPP. Have you asked previously?
I have been this month.
Suzanne?
I have been in that conversation for about approximately a month.
You've been asking?
And it doesn't seem like the regional center has the service per se, but they vendorize. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, somebody would help them, an agency would help them learn how to take the bus. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my card is here if you need it. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, so one more. There you go.
What if you don't have any friends or supportive system and you're on your own? What do you do?
Yeah, so that's why it's very controversial, even with the self-determination. You're asking if they're on their own and they don't have a support. And with the self-determination program, I know that there are people in Sacramento that feel like there shouldn't be people like case managers being the independent facilitator, for instance. But I initially really, I always feel like they should be unbiased, and I think it's better if it's not like a case manager on the supported decision-making team. But if that is the only person that you have, then that's where you start, right? So I think you start where you are, and you start with what you have.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and show the next video, and then we'll move on.